Media. Fueled by C4, Cellucor, and Extend. Use the code Clydesdale to get 20% off at checkout at c4energy.com. On Clydesdale Media, where we bring you the widest array of content here on our YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notifier so you're the first to know when new episodes are available. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Clydesdale Media Podcast. My name is Scott Switzer. I'm the Clydesdale. This is an episode I am super stoked for. You get these every once in a while, that it's a little bit special. And it's someone that I have known virtually for a very long time, and got to meet for the first time in person a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And her name is Lauren Olson. Welcome, Lauren.
Hey, thank you.
So what makes this special is, we have chatted online for probably 3 years, almost the length that this podcast has been around. Mm-hmm. And those talks have been very superficial, right? That's how social media is.
Yep.
But you crack me up. You're a great follow on social media. You are goofy as hell. And I love that. I love every bit about that.
Yeah,
but
thanks.
You posted a story. It's been a few weeks ago, and I think it was a story because I cannot find it.
Yes.
And so you posted a story about something you had done that I really wanted to highlight on this show. But I want to start with your background when you were a kid. Were you always into sports and athletics?
I was, yeah. I want to say as early as, I think I did T-ball. So, 5, 6, but I want to say I really started competitive basketball probably around the age of 7 or 8. So I grew up playing your 3 main ball sports for females, basketball, volleyball, and softball. And I come from a really small town that they really emphasize basketball. So they started very young with that sport. So I grew up playing those 3 sports, not really diverse in other ones, which I regret now as an adult doing CrossFit. I wish I would have done gymnastics or swimming. But yeah, basketball, volleyball, and softball is what I grew up doing.
So did any of those become the main sport? Because as a 3-sport athlete in high school myself, I did 3 sports, but there was one that I was really good at. Others I was pretty good at, but one kind of took the lead.
I feel like I feel like volleyball and basketball were my 2 main ones. I did play JUCO basketball. So I did 1 year of college. So I guess you could say that took priority. But it was because that college stopped volleyball the year I graduated high school. I think I would have rather played volleyball in college, but I did that for 1 year and I set the bench. So it was weird going from top dog in a little school to bottom of the totem pole in college.
So that's kind of the time that I want to talk about this special story, right? You go to college and something happens where you meet a girl, you meet a little girl. Your story was vague. So
yes.
I'm begging you for the details of this.
Okay.
At the age of, I think it started at the age of 19, you met her?
Yeah, it's a pretty wild story. So 18 to 19 years old, I played basketball. I ended up moving to Springfield, Missouri, which was about 2 hours away from the college I was going to. I transferred to online classes, and I was just gonna, work. I don't really know my thought pattern of moving. I just wanted something different. From there, I got a job at Curves Fitness Center. Do you remember that? Yeah. So if somebody's listening or watching and they don't know what that is, it's just a fitness center for ladies, and it was resistance machines and a circuit training. But I got a job there, and I met one of the members. Her name is Sheila, and she was raising her granddaughter, Bella. And Bella was 9 months old at the time. So my relationship with Sheila grew, which means like as we hung out, she would bring Bella. So I fell in love with this little girl who was 9 months old. I just loved kids. And then one day, Sheila brought in pictures of Bella's dad, which is her son. And I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. And so she's like, well, he's coming to visit. Do you want to meet him? I was like, sure. So anyway, so we connected, and that's how the story started with Bella. So I actually met her first when she was 9 months old. And then I met her dad, which then became my husband like 6 months later. Yeah, you're 20. I mean, what else do? You go get married.
Okay.
So not really. There was a story behind that. He was military. So he was a single dad, which is why Sheila had Bella. And he was about to deploy. So we married very quickly. So hi, Lex. I love you too. We married pretty quickly so I could get guardianship over Bella while he was deployed.
Okay. Now that makes sense.
Yes, that's kind of how it started. So I met Bella, married her father, and then so guardianship is just like a legal document saying that I could take her to the doctors or, sign for her if needed, but there was really no parental rights involved in that. So then we talked about doing an actual adoption with her and taking the biological mother's rights away. Which is just, it's wild to think about now, because I remember I think it was 18 or 19, I had this toy Yorkie dog. Ironically, her name was Izzy, which was short for Isabella. And I couldn't take care of her. She was like very high needs, needed like special food. And so my parents took her. And so it's funny because then a year later, I meet a child. And I was like, yes, I'm ready. Let's be a mom. So it's just crazy that at 20 years old, I decided to do that.
So I'm going to dive in a little bit, and you answer what you want to answer. Tell me to mind my own business.
No. Yes.
So there is a birth mother,
Yes.
and
yes.
You are trying to adopt. Was the birth mother completely out of the picture? Wanted nothing to do with Bella at the time?
Yeah,
and
I guess.
You wanted to fill that role.
Sure. Yeah, that was pretty vague, I guess, my story part. Yes. So the biological mom was pretty out of the picture. She was also very young. I want to say she's a little older than me. So I think she was 20 when she gave birth to Bella. And so she was like partying, just kind of would leave Bella with different family members, which is why Christian, the biological dad, had taken that role on, but he was like a single father, like I said, in the military. So she was pretty non-existent. I have still never met the biological mom. Through the adoption process, we started that, it finalized in 14, and I want to say we started in maybe 2011. So it took 3 years for the adoption to finalize, because Tennessee is a pro-mom state, which is where we lived at the time. So we had to like mail the biological mom questions. She actually filled them out and returned them, which was not great for us because it kind of showed that she cared. I say that very lackingly. So she returned the questions. When they set the first court date, she didn't show up. So they had to allow her a chance to get a lawyer. So they did a second court date about 8 months later. And then she did not show up for the second one. So, I mean, it took a long time.
So Christian, the father,
Uh-huh.
is that the person you're still with today?
No. My story is crazy, but I love it. We're so blended. So Christian and I decided to separate in 2016. We are very different people. We were very young when we got married. So we had Bella together, and then we did have another daughter together. So we have Charlotte. Bella is now 13 and Charlotte is 8. So they are half sisters. And then when Christian and I divorced in 2016, I met my current husband, George, through my gym, CrossFit Believe. And then we've been together since late 2016.
And you have a third daughter.
We do. She's 4 and she's sassy and she's wild.
Okay. So let's backtrack now.
Sure.
So you're going through the adoption process. Christian is in the military, and the reason you kind of did this is he was going to get deployed and Bella needed someone to take care of her.
Yes.
So did all that happen? Like, did Christian go overseas and then you were kind of just single mom actually-ish during that time?
Yes and no. My parents are really supportive. And then Christian's dad, I'm really close with as well. Excuse me. So timeline wise, I meet Bella in May of 09. No, sorry, May of 10. She wasn't alive in 09. May of 2010, I meet Bella and then meet Christian in June. We get married in December of 2010. And then he deploys in January of 11. So after that, I moved in with his dad for about 5 months. So I had some help with Bella, with Tom, which is Christian's dad. And then we moved in with my parents. They live about an hour away. And we lived with them until Christian returned from deployment.
Was when he returned from deployment when you realized this may not be the best marriage matchup?
I think so. We moved when he returned from deployment. We moved to Tennessee with him, and so we were together from 2011 to 2016. So about 5 years of marriage of like, hey, let's make this work. It was just interesting. I think growing up, I watched my parents who have been married. Gosh, I don't want to say the wrong year. We just celebrated it, 40 years maybe. So I was raised with that, and I see that my parents have a lot in common. They do things together. So when I was married to Christian, I was just like, something's not right. We never did anything together. I'd go with my friends, he'd go with his, and it was just kind of me and Bella. We truly grew up together. So we just kind of hung out, and then we had Charlotte, and then it became like the 3 of us. So I guess that's kind of where we realized at the end of the marriage, when I got a job here in Missouri, Christian and I just talked about like, maybe this isn't right for us. It was very much a mutual, clean divorce, which was really nice.
Would it be fair to say that you may have been more in love with Bella than Christian?
100%. Yeah, our story is just so cool. I ended up telling her adoption story when I was pregnant with Nora, my youngest. So about 4 years ago, I told Bella, because my number one rule was like, don't ever lie to Belle. So stretch the truth, but don't lie. So she would ask questions when I was pregnant, like, hey, when I was in your belly, did this happen? And I'd say, oh, when your mom was pregnant with you, yeah, this happened. And then she would say, well, did you breastfeed me when I was a baby? And so I told her like, oh, you had stomach issues, which she did. And you had to be on special formula. So it's just getting harder to do that without lying. So I wrote her like a 6-page letter, and we sat on my bed and I read it to her, and we both cried, and it was really beautiful. And then I want to say 2 years ago, when we celebrated our Forever Day, that's when I let her know that she has other siblings through her biological mother's side. So our story just kind of keeps building, but it's just so beautiful. And I try to remind her, like, God did this. We were made for each other. I am your mom. And I truly believe that. And she does too.
Well, Lex wants everyone to know that Lauren is such a great mom. Her girls are amazing.
Thanks, Lex. They loved when they came to visit. They only had, I don't think they had Callie. Did you guys? But Coast is huge, and we have a doodle who's not as big as Lexus's dog. But my girls loved him. They all played and they were crazy, and Carol and Alexis handled my girls very well.
So you and Christian have a second daughter, but in your mind, they're both your daughters, right? Like unequivocally.
Yes. Yeah.
The love for both is the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and Christian decide it's not right for your marriage. How is your relationship today with Christian?
I'm going to say it's great. Christian has been in prison for a couple of years. Sorry, surprise. He just made some really poor choices, and that kind of goes back to like how different we were. I actually, which we'll get to this, I'm sure soon, but I had started CrossFit, and he just was not involved in that. And he liked to drink and ride motorcycles, and I was not into that. So it just kind of led to wrong choices and landed him where he is. So we don't get to talk, but he does talk to the girls every so often. And like, I'm open to building that relationship back if or when he gets out of prison.
Okay. And that is, and I'm sorry, like I got to know more.
That's okay.
Is it a question whether when or if?
I'm going to lean more toward if. I don't see it likely happening. But you never know. I don't know like the 100% truth of what happened or why he's in there. I just know bits and pieces. But I know it's not great. And so I don't see him getting out anytime soon if he gets out.
So it's fair to say the girls are going to be adults probably if he gets out.
Yeah. And Bella's almost 14 now, so she's in 2016. I'm doing my math. So she was 7 when I met George, and that would have made Charlotte 2. And so now they're 8 and almost 14. So George is really just who they know. Now they do go visit Christian's dad once a month, and that's when they'll talk to Christian. He'll call them, but especially Charlotte, she has lots of questions, but it's very much like, he's my biological dad, but George is my dad. Whereas Bella has memories with Christian, so she'll ask lots of questions and tell me things that she talked to Christian about on the phone, or memories that they had when she was young.
So these cannot be easy discussions as a mom with your 2 girls.
No, and they're both so different personality-wise that like Bella is she's such an old soul, and I feel like it's her first 8 months of life, 9 months. She was raised with Sheila, her grandma. So she was really around like a lot of older adults, not really young moms or younger kids. And so I just feel like maybe that has to do with why she's such an old soul now, maybe. But she's very easy to go ahead.
You think it could be that because you both were young at the time that you were growing up together, and almost relied on each other through those times?
Yeah, that too, for sure. I mean, and that's so true. Like, I remember the first summer that I had her, like, I literally went from a 19-year-old single female to boom, you're a mom to a 9-month-old at 20 years old. And I remember going on this road trip with my parents, and Bella was crying, wanting to hold my hand. And I was so frustrated. I was like, I don't want to hold your hand. I'm in the car. Like, I want to sit forward. I don't want to reach back and hold your hand. Anyways, that stands out distinctively because my mother was like a little upset. Like she wants to hold your hand. And I'm like, Mom, I was just frustrated because I'm like, I don't have that connection yet. You have to build that. I didn't have the 9 months of pregnancy to build that. So that just kind of stood out in my mind of like, I grew and Bella grew and then we grew together.
So looking back at that moment,
Yeah.
can you imagine that you were in a state where you weren't that connected? Because today, and again, I only know your social media posts about it,
Yeah.
but you seem so tight and so close that like you holding her hand would be basic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of strange to think about. Like I feel like I've always loved children and I've always wanted kids of my own. But when you're in it, especially without, the 10 months to process that, it was really like, hey, this is my child. This is not just a kid that I'm babysitting. So that was a lot. It was really weird to think about like, nope, you have to change your mindset. But yeah, definitely now it's weird to think that I was ever in that position of being like, I don't know. Even today, I think, even today though, I'm like, I need space. Can you move? Can you go away?
Well, I think
Yeah.
all parents go through that, right?
Yeah.
Where you just need, like, my daughter has pushed me to the brink
Yeah.
where I'm just like, okay, dad needs some alone time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? We're all there. But I think it's cool to explore the fact that you went into this again, not carrying the child, but you loved her in some way and knew she needed cared for and needed a mother figure.
Mhm.
But there's a transitional process to that.
For sure.
And it's not just immediate. And I think other mothers, other blended families, this is critical for them to understand that it's not just a snap of the fingers and all of a sudden you're mom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was so young, I don't think I could understand those types of feelings. But if that was me now, so I'm 33 now, if I were to take on a child, I would remind myself that it's okay to have these feelings. Like it's okay to have guilt of being like, it's just okay to feel all these feelings. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be like this gung ho loving mother all the time. It's not going to be perfect and ideal. I think if people are doing that now, or even myself with my own biological kids, I have to remind myself of that. Like, it's okay to get upset. It's okay to need space. It's okay to feel disconnected sometimes. Take that moment and then figure out how to rebuild that connection with your kids.
And Christians off overseas, you're doing this by yourself alone in
Yeah.
this transition. I mean, excuse me. We've had moments where my wife has looked at me and said, "You need to take over. I need to go away because I'm going to kill her."
Yeah.
Right? We had each other to be able to play tag team in those
Yeah.
moments. And not only are you taking on a new child at 19, you're doing it by yourself. Now,
Yeah.
granted, you had parents, you had
Mhm.
his parents, but the day-to-day stuff was you.
Yeah. And even thinking back, as a full-time student too. So it's just weird to relive that memory. And it's like, how did I do all that? I mean, I got it done, but yeah, I was in school, I was learning how to be a mom. And I am so thankful that my parents in Tom, they're all great, but my parents, because I had the long time living with them, um, it's so nice just to be like, hey, can you take her, please? I need a moment. I feel very comfortable with my parents doing that too. Even now, I'm like, take my kids, please. And they're great with help.
So you've been pretty open on social media about your faith, about God being in your life.
Mhm.
Was that the case when this was going down?
No, no. Like I grew up in church. Is that what you mean? Like,
Yeah, like
no.
it seems like now you can lean on God.
Hmm.
I want to know, could you lean on God when all this is happening?
Yes and no. So that's strange. I grew up in church, and I feel like I grew out of that when I first went to college. But
That's
Christian's dad,
that.
Tom, yes, and I think that's I don't want to say normal, but it is pretty frequent that people do that. And then you just have to find your way back as an adult. But Christian's dad, Tom, he's a preacher. So when I met this family, when I met Bella, I
Wow,
started.
more twists and turns to this story.
Oh, I know. So it's just like, God placed me there. But I just remember in that time, though, I was just so conflicted. Like I felt the need to go to church, but I just didn't know. I didn't know how to do that, how to step into the building, how to talk about my feelings and what's going on. So no, I don't feel like in that time when I met Bella that I was like, this is a God thing, or that I could pray and talk and see if there was answers on how I was feeling, you know?
Well, and if you find a good church community,
Mhm.
it can be a support system for you too,
Yeah.
because there are other people that have probably gone through the same thing you're going through,
Hmm.
but you probably, and I'm putting this on you, you probably felt alone at times, other than having the best parents ever, it sounds like,
Right.
right? Like, but you felt like alone as a 19, 20-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy to feel like no one else can know how you're feeling or what you're going through, no matter what your story is. But mine specifically, I remember just like, okay, mom, I'm going to use my mom as an example, and she may rewatch this, but she would get upset with me at times, and it's just like, you didn't go through this, you didn't adopt me and have to learn how to do this. So I do remember feeling upset, or anger toward her because she would be upset with me. um, yeah, so it's easy to feel like no one else has walked your path when there have been people or very similar stories.
So then, fast forward, you get divorced. When Christian goes to prison, are you with George at that time?
I am, yeah.
So at least you had that stability in the girls' lives,
Yes.
and you. When that happens, as a mom, what do you say to your daughters at that moment?
Like I was saying earlier, like Bella and Charlotte both have such different personalities. So I feel like I can be very open with Bella, but not so open with Charlotte yet because she's not quite mature. I hate to say that, but I just don't feel like the maturity is there where she could process it.
And she knows Christian less, right? You've already stated that.
Yes, yeah. And with Bella, I try to be as open as I can be, but like I never want it to come off that I'm talking poorly about Christian or saying anything bad because there's nothing bad to say. It's just he made bad choices and you have to pay for that. Um, but it is a little awkward sometimes, yeah, because like I remember one time Charlotte, my 8-year-old, um, came in just crying. And I was like, "What's going on? Let's talk." And she's like, "I just need to know, am I going to be like dad? Like, am I going to go kill people?" And I was like, "Whoa, hang on." Like, first of all, that's not what happened. Secondly, that's so much for an 8-year-old. Like, what is happening? That was so much. But she was so scared that she was going to turn out and be angry like dad. And I was like, well, let's talk about this. So it can get a little uncomfortable, but you kind of just have to roll with it.
Yeah, and I don't even know how to. So, how many private moments has there been with? Because you have to treat them differently. You say,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure. Like, there's a sit down with Bella, and
Mhm.
you and her have these conversations, just the two of you, and I'm sure the same happens with Charlotte, and you have to have those conversations kind of independently.
Yeah. Yeah.
How often do those come up in life today?
I won't say often. Bella, because she's a teenager, she's emotional. So when she does have episodes of like sadness, usually when we talk about it, dad will be brought up. So it's kind of resorted back to that. Charlotte is, it's almost, she uses humor as her way to cope with it. Because hers will be just like out of nowhere. And she'll ask, I don't know, she'll just make a joke like, Oh yeah, my dad's in prison. I mean, it'll be in the car driving down the road and she'll hear something on the radio and she'll associate it with dad. So she kind of deals with hers through humor. Um, but I don't feel like it happens very often.
Okay. So you get through all that
Yeah.
and you meet George. So how do you and George meet?
Okay. So when I moved back to Missouri, which is where I'm from, so Christian and we separate. I had just finished college to become a PE teacher. And I got a job in Clinton, Missouri, which is about 30 minutes from my hometown where my parents live. So I move down the road from my parents, and then I work at this high school. And I start at a CrossFit gym in Sedalia, Missouri, which is about 30 minutes away. So anyway, so I start there and I get put on this team. I was doing a competition. It was 4-person, 2 guys, 2 girls. And they called George in to be our second guy. And I just found his personality through our group message very attractive. I thought he was really funny. He was good looking from the pictures I saw on social media. And then a few weeks later, I went to a competition at CrossFit Believe, which is now my gym. And that's where George was going. He was working out there. And so I went there to do this competition, and then we officially met in person there.
Was it instant?
For me, I thought so. I was just so tickled. I just thought he was so handsome. He's 6'5". He's huge, and
and you're taller for a female CrossFitter.
I'm 5'8". Yeah. So I also need a tall man, So I thought he was super attractive. He did not catch on to me flirting whatsoever. It actually took a friend of his to be like, "Hey, I think she's flirting with you," for him to flirt back.
Yeah, same thing happened with my wife, and I was totally cool.
She was flirting with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. I didn't see it. And yeah, someone had to smack me around a little bit to say, "Hey, he kind of likes you."
Yeah, and I feel like women, or I don't know how your wife was. I was like, so obvious. I don't know. Like,
Oh, she'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So you guys meet at CrossFit Believe.
Uh-huh.
How long before he or you ask the other out?
It was probably 6 months or so of our friendship before anything came about. I actually started to go to CrossFit Believe, and then just kind of put myself out there, hoping that he would take that bait, and he did eventually. But it took a few months of just being friends and seeing each other in passing, and then all of a sudden I'm showing up to his gym, which now I'm like, was that crazy? Maybe that was a little crazy.
Yeah. I'm thinking the same thing. Stalking works sometimes,
It's fine. Yeah, stalking, that's what it was. He was just still clueless. Didn't know.
Wow. Yeah, so you go to CrossFit Believe, and you find this thing CrossFit, right? And you've had a lot going on in your life.
Yeah.
Was CrossFit something that kind of helped center you and bring you into a community?
Yeah. So we can go back to 2015 for CrossFit. I was in school to become a PE teacher, and I had to do observations at this elementary school. And the teacher there, she did CrossFit. And so I asked her, like, what do you do? Because I grew up in sports. And then, of course, in college, you kind of get away from that. I drank a lot, partied, ate really bad. Excuse me. But then I got that job at Curves, and that kind of like reopened my passion for fitness. So in 2015, that was about, let's see, I had Charlotte in September of 14. So in January of 15 is when I started CrossFit at this little gym called CrossFit Conversion. Super awesome people. But that's kind of where that community came in. I just didn't know what I was missing in my life. I was married to Christian. He was literally gone all the time. He was doing his motorcycle stuff. So I just kind of felt just really, I don't want to say alone, but I was so young. I knew there was something missing in my life. And so when I found CrossFit and these people were just like awesome from the get go, and I could bring my 2 kids in there and they loved my kids. It was just super cool. So that's how that community started for me, was in 2015. So when I did my job searching to get my first job, I made sure, like, if it was some random town, I would Google CrossFit gyms near Warrensburg, Missouri. So I wanted to make sure wherever I was applying to get a job, there was a CrossFit gym close to that.
And so I've read in one of your Instagram posts that you become a PE teacher,
Mhm.
you become a coach, you've got 2 young daughters,
Yeah.
you meet George, and you're trying to CrossFit,
Yeah.
and you're trying to fit all of that into a day.
Yeah. It's wild to think back on. So when I did move here and I got my first job, this was prior to meeting George. So I was a teacher and I coached 2 out of the 3 sports seasons. Um, and I feel like I truly was working like 70 hours a week, 60 to 70. I know that sounds crazy, but with like lesson planning and traveling to sports and sports practices, um, it was so much. So my family truly they were raising my kids. My mom was. So anytime we had like a weekend break with no tournament, I just soaked that in with my kids. Um, so I just missed a lot. But yeah, so at some point in that time, I met George, and then we moved in together. And he was traveling from where I was living to Warrensburg, where he worked and he coached at CrossFit Believe. That was about an hour trip one way. So he's like, "Hey, why don't we just move to Warrensburg?" Um, so that's why we ended up here, which is great. But yeah, so like I did CrossFit, but it was kind of like I competed locally, but I didn't take it as seriously as I do now. Um, I still drink alcohol almost every night. I ate okay, but I definitely wasn't like the healthiest that I could be physically or mentally during that time.
So the long weeks, the the pressures of trying to be a mom,
Mhm.
being a coach, doing all these things came to a head at some point.
Mhm.
And like and the drinking, you said you were still drinking at that time. Was
Yeah.
it just to, like, decompress from all the stuff you were trying to do,
Mm,
or was it for the fun of it?
just for the I think George and I enjoyed it. So we would just drink 1 or 2 beers every night, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're doing it every night, um, I mean, for one, financially it added up, and then it definitely took a toll on like my body, my performance. Um, and then uh, one night we went out on a date night. It was shortly after we had Nora, so it was like I want to say December of 19. We went to a Mexican restaurant. We had some margaritas, too many. And the next day I was like, I hate this because that was the first night, like Nora would not sleep through the night that night, of course. So it was like I'm hungover slash drunk and she's screaming. And so the next day I was like, I don't want to feel like that anymore. So I haven't drank since that night in December of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at what point does the busyness come to a head and you wanna be a mom, right? You wanna be a wife. You wanna do things that bring you a passion.
Hmm.
Um, so what brings it to a head?
Actually, I was pregnant. That's what that's what made that happen. I was pregnant with Nora, and we were just doing some budgeting. As a school teacher, like it's just not good money. And George has been in college. He'll finish this December, so he's been doing like a part-time job slash full-time student. So like financially, we were about the same, um, but it's just not enough to put a baby in daycare. Um, Plus the gas that we spent going to work. So we really sat down and had to budget and say, okay, what are we going to do? Is it worth it for 2 parents to work and to put her in daycare? Could we afford this for one of us to quit our job, and then which one will it be? So we had to do a lot of talking and praying and budgeting, and for me personally, I knew that I could get more done around the house for the kids if it was me to stay at home. Whereas as a dad, he would work, but also maybe not utilize his time at home as productively as I would. So that's what made our decision for me to resign from teaching. And then I became a stay-at-home mom / full-time coach at CrossFit Believe.
You also got into some pre and postnatal coaching.
Yeah.
And in 2010, when all this started, could you ever see yourself being that in the future?
No. No, I mean, I have always wanted to be a school teacher since I was a little girl. So that's literally all I could see was finish school, become a school teacher. But I do remember at one point when I was deciding, because I originally wanted to be elementary education. But I was like, I love fitness. I love sports. How can I make that and teaching come together? And so my only thought was physical education and health education, which I loved doing. But I did not think about, hey, coaching CrossFit classes is teaching. I'm still able to teach kids, teenagers, adults, and then bring them into the fitness and health world as well. So it was a good way to convert those.
And you've kind of created your own little business with that, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I started CrossFit right after I had Charlotte, my second daughter. But then with Nora, so I was like 4 years deep into CrossFit. I CrossFitted throughout the entire pregnancy. I CrossFitted, of course, postpartum, but I was not educated. And I did things that I wish I wouldn't have in my postpartum journey that I know about now. And that's kind of what enticed me to focus on the pregnancy and postpartum training, specifically around CrossFit. I train women who do all sports, but my niche is really through the CrossFit community there.
So you have your business. You're now a full-time coach at Believe. What I find fascinating is, and please don't take offense to this, looking at your CrossFit career, it's not like bam, Lauren's going to be one of the greats, or you know what I mean? And last year you were on a team. That team made team quarters, and that's kind of where it stops. This year, what the hell happened? You got on a team, and that team blew up. You were crushing it.
Yeah.
So what happens this year? Is it a whole new team? Is it a whole new environment, new focus? What happened this year that changed everything?
So ironically, I went on Aaliyah Miller. You had her on your show. I went on her podcast last year to talk about my coaching business. And I just remember when she introduced me, she's like, Lauren Olson, aspiring CrossFit Games athlete. And I just remember being like, ugh, don't say that. I don't want to put that goal into the universe. Like, my goal is semifinals. So now, a year later, it's just wild that I was so like, please don't put that out there for everyone to hear that. Because you just never know what will happen in a year. But last year we were on a team. We went to quarterfinals. However, about a week before quarterfinals, I fractured my patella, and then our other girl actually had torn her shoulder, and so we were both just kind of working through it. But I had fractured my patella that I didn't know was a fracture. I knew something was wrong because I couldn't squat, but I didn't find out about the fracture until after quarterfinals. So we did not qualify for semifinals last year, and then I went and got X-rays done, and I was like, well, that'll explain why I couldn't do thrusters or the squatting or the shuttle runs. But anyways, so it was a blessing. And then we did switch teammates this year. We had a girl move to us from Idaho, and she was on Verdant CrossFit's semifinal team last year. And so when she moved to Warrensburg, I was like, hey, we need a female. Are you interested? And she's like, sure. So we found 2 guys from Lebanon, Missouri, which is about 2.5 hours away. And that's how we just became a team. And then we did really well in quarterfinals. We placed.
Just so I can,
yeah,
so I can like set the picture.
Sure.
I'll just share this because it'll be easier that way.
Okay.
So last year's team, you took 42nd or no 188th in 2022 in the Worldwide Open, and then in quarterfinals, you took 127th.
Yeah.
And then this year, the drastic difference is, and this is actually team quarterfinals worldwide, you took 42nd. And in the region, you took 7th.
Yeah.
So not only do you qualify for quarterfinals, but you qualify in a favored position to move to the games.
Yes. Yeah, it was wild. One of our guy teammates, he's like, "Hey, let's not just have the goal of semifinals. Like, let's have a goal of the CrossFit Games." And so that was pretty cool to even set that goal. But then after quarterfinals, seeing that we came out in 7th, it was just so much more realistic. And literally from then forward, every single training day, it's like, you are a games athlete. You are a games athlete, and that's just the mantra that we lived with going forward, which was really cool to say that and to believe that.
So you made a post about 4 weeks before semis that you were in a dark place about all of this.
Yeah.
And so you have this team that's doing phenomenal. You are doing things you've never done before in your CrossFit career. And yet you're in a dark place because I believe it's that you don't believe you belong.
Yes. Yeah.
So how much of training for this season is mental and how much is physical?
Scott, I would truly say that it's been more mental than physical. I mean, physical, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but the most fun at the same time. But mental, I just feel like I've never been pushed like that mentally, this hard, to where I've had to feel these feelings. Not that I'm not a feeler, I'm very emotional, but like you truly have to embrace that. You have to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is why I'm feeling that way, but I don't need to stay here. And it's taken me a long time to understand that. I work with she's a nutrition coach, but I need it more for the mental side of it. So she's more of a wellness coach for me. And she just has really helped me through that. Just everything, training the brain, visualization, journaling, everything that I needed to get through that.
So how much help was it to have friends like Carolyn, Lex, Aaliyah, people who have kind of been down this road before? Did you reach out to any of them, or did you try to do it on your own?
I would say Lex would be the biggest one I've talked to. She's really good about checking in. She can tell if we're snapping and something's off. She's like, "Are you okay?" Or if I post something on social media and she's like, "What's going on?" I do feel like she's been through that. I no doubt everyone's been through the mental side of it, but I feel like we can connect on that side where she went through something last year, I went through it this year. So she's pretty good about checking in. But I would say it's more so Ashley Todd. She's my coach through Well-Fed Health. She's the one that I'm like most comfortable with, like, this is how I feel. Like I can't, one day I was at Charlotte's baseball practice and I had my sunglasses on and I'm just like bawling. And I'm like, I can't stop crying. I don't want to feel like this anymore. So she's the one I feel most comfortable talking to about it.
Yeah. I mean, I have people close to me that I reach out to, and because I'm going through my own journey, not a big CrossFit journey, but a weight loss journey.
Yeah.
And Lex has been one of the kindest human beings
Yeah.
to me. She reaches out and checks on me all the time.
She
And
knows.
I'm actually tearing up right now.
Oh,
Like she just is. And so when you say that, like that she can see it, she
yeah.
identifies it, and she reaches out. She just is one of the greatest human beings I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. If she's still listening, so you should like run with that, Lex, and maybe, I don't know, you're really good at just knowing people.
And so that's, and I do have people like close to me that I can talk to and
Yeah.
reach out and all of that, that you're really, because I know I didn't meet Lex until Orlando in
Yeah.
person.
Oh,
Kind of like,
fun.
the same with you.
Yeah.
So,
Aw.
and that was just an awesome experience. But so then so you're going through all of this and you come to a realization that you do belong,
Mhm.
and that you do deserve to get to go to semifinals, and then your mindset changes,
Yeah.
that you just need to live in each day.
Yeah. It's just such a bad place to be in, no matter if it's the CrossFit Games or if it's a weight loss journey and you're feeling these feelings, like no one deserves to feel that way. And it really got to the point where I was taking things that people were saying and it was just like living in my brain, whether they meant it badly or not. And it just like ate away at me. Um, and so I truly feel like I woke up one day and I was like, no more. Like, you don't like this. This is not who you are. Like, I like to be the bubbly sunshine happiness that people see. And it was so bad to where like one of my clients, he comes in and we're warming up and I didn't say, it was just a normal session. And he's like, are you okay? Like something's off. And it's like, okay, I don't want the people in my life to feel that energy. So I just woke up and just kind of snapped out of it. And it's like, no, you're working your ass off. You deserve this just as much as the most elite of the elite. You do belong here. Um, so it's just once I felt that, it's just been easier mentally, more fun physically to show up and do these like workouts that kill me, because it's like, nope, you belong. You're here.
So one thing that you said that I connect with is you're that person that always wants to be bubbly. You
Yeah.
always want to be the giver of the energy, right?
Yeah.
And I think people that are like that, because I try to be that too,
Mhm.
and you don't realize when you've drained.
Yes.
You don't realize when that bucket is empty, and that you need to take for a while.
Mhm.
And I think that's a major concern with people who are the light, try to be the light in the room, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes the bucket's just empty. And oftentimes it happens in our own personal life where we're in those alone times and there's nothing left in there for us.
Hmm.
And sometimes you have to take a step back and let people fill your bucket.
Sure. And I'm going to shout out to Nikki. She's on your podcast. She is my bucket filler. Like, she knows when it's drained for me. Because I'm sure that, as you know, when our bucket's drained, like, it's not like it's a gradual where we feel it. It's just like, hey, I'm super high one day. And the next day I wake up and I'm like, why do I feel this way? She is my bucket filler. So she every day will just remind me of things and we chat. And of course, I have more bucket fillers, but she's the big one that comes to mind where she's like, nope, here we go, picking you up.
Yeah. She's another one that reaches out and always
Yeah, I
like
love that.
people, and
Yeah,
she's awesome.
she's so awesome.
So then we get to semis, and
Mhm.
now it's going to take a personal turn. I'm so excited. I get to meet Lauren for the first time. And, you know, getting to media, we have to go get our wristbands and then check in and do all the stuff. And I get out to the floor and you guys are already going on event one.
Yeah.
And I'm behind the rig and there you are, larger than life, going to town, holding sandbags, hopping on echo bikes, doing all the stuff. And I got so excited rooting for you
Oh,
in
yay.
that moment. And it was awesome. And then I loved the muscle up workout.
Yeah,
I
that
loved
one was
being in
really fun.
a rig right
I
behind you
saw
guys.
you too. I was like, oh my gosh, there's Scott.
So you're in the moment, and we're 55 minutes in, and I usually only go an hour, but I want to talk about semis
Okay.
because you guys come in as the 7th seed,
Mhm.
and the weekend probably didn't go as you planned. And you rode a roller coaster of emotions. It is the best way to describe it.
Oh,
Ups, downs, all
all
around
around. Yep.
throughout that weekend. So
Yeah.
I got to have you back on another time, and we'll get into it deeper, like as we get
Sure.
closer to the games or something. But give us a 30,000-foot look at what your weekend was like.
Yeah, like you said, emotions. It went from like event one started off with a lower placing than we thought from practice. You practice these. Um, and then it was like a really high on event two, a low on event three. It's just funny because we would have like a killer event two, and we're like, surely we can't get any worse than event one. And then event three is like, and so on event three, we're like, surely we can't do any worse than event three. And then event six was like,
I want to talk about 6. So
oh,
bring us up to 6, because at
yeah.
that point, like you're going into the last event, and I think you were in 7th or 8th.
We were in ninth, but it was like a cushion ninth.
Yeah, like okay, that's probably it. I saw the point spread, and I was like,
Yes.
okay, my girl's gonna make it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 6 comes, and like I'm getting emotional.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine what it's like being on the floor as the pieces kind of start falling apart.
Yeah. Um, like it is a team workout, but it was also very much an individual capacity. And practicing this, like I did my wall facing unbroken, and then the other two were in 2 sets. Because we practiced it like I had to finish all of my 10 before Shelby went, and vice versa. And Shelby actually was the one who struggled in our practice. And so when we get on the floor and we can split these up however we want, we're like, heck yeah, we're going to kill this. And then it was me on the floor reaching failure. And it's like, Shelby has already finished her work, and it's just literally me. And that was just like, God, all I could replay. Our teammate Josh was like, yo, if we just finish this workout, I mean, even if we finish it in 15 minutes and 59 seconds, we're going to games. Um, and so when I would hear the announcers, I'm like, we're going to get time capped. Holy shit. This sucks. No, I mean, no, I'm not beating myself up now. I was then, but it was like, this is your fault. If we don't make it, it's because you reach failure.
And so what is the pressure? And because I've been on teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being on a team, like I've only thrown up a handful of times in CrossFit, and every time it's been when I'm on a team.
Yeah.
Because I have this thing in my head where I don't want to let anybody down.
Yeah.
So I push my body beyond what it's capable of, and then my body throws up after I'm done with all that, right?
Right.
So you're in the moment, and you've got to get back on the wall.
Yeah.
But if you go back too soon, like,
yeah.
So how do you stay calm, or didn't you stay calm?
Oh, I feel like I stayed pretty calm. There's no reason to get worked up because it's out of my control. When your body's at failure, like you said, all you can do is just rest. I do regret that we didn't have a game plan of like sets. Like we should have done sets, Shelby and I. But so she had finished hers, and I was just left to chip away. But she's kind of my go-to. Like I could tell that the boys were upset. I could see that. But poor Shelby, she's watching this. We just have this relationship to where, like, I can tell she's trying to get me back on the wall. But if I'm upset with her, I can kind of like verbally say that, like, shut up. And then we just laugh and hug it out afterwards. But she was trying to count me down. All right, Lauren, here we go. 5, 4, and it worked until I reached failure again. And then I was like, shh, let me just rest and I'll chip away. But yeah, it's really hard to know that your team is waiting on you and that you're the one failing. That was a terrible feeling.
So then you go from that moment to where the powers that be at CrossFit make you stand and wait for them to tabulate the score out in front of God and everybody.
Yeah.
You're out there vulnerable on the floor. What are the conversations you and your team are having at that moment, or are you not talking to each other?
Well, now that I've processed it, I'm no longer like embarrassed or ashamed of my performance. I was at first. Now I'm more so embarrassed at my reaction because I was just so emotional. After that whole weekend, you just kind of block that out and you turn it off. And it just got released when we got time capped. I laid on the floor. It just came out. Shelby came and picked me up. We went over to the finishing mat. The boys were just kind of processing by themselves, but Shelby came over to me and hugged me, and she was like, "Let's pray." So, I mean, I probably cried. It felt like 15 minutes. But I made the post about this, and it's so real. But when we prayed, like about 10 minutes or 10 seconds later, like from my head, literally, I could feel it going all the way down. It was just calm. And then I just stopped. And I was like, okay, all right, God, I hear you. I'm just going to wait. Because at that point, he already has the winners planned out. There's no reason to stress and cry over what just happened. So that was really cool.
So from my perspective,
Yeah.
I'm being asked by the head of media who I want to interview on the floor.
Yeah.
Well, going into it, like Team Believe was who I wanted to interview.
Yeah. Oh.
Right. Like I've been following your journey the whole weekend, the ups and downs. You're a friend of mine. Like we had never met in person until that weekend, but I considered you a friend and I wanted your story. And then 6 happens and I'm like, oh shit, this may not be.
Maybe I don't want to
interview. And so I'm trying and you can't even do the math in your head because like the other heats are involved now. And I don't know the math. And so I'm like, shit, what questions am I going to ask if they
How
don't
do you
make
feel?
right? Like, so they end up doing the results and they get to 10.
Yeah.
And they announce you guys, and you actually got in by 1 flipping point.
1 point. Ugh. I'm like, that could have been that one handstand push-up, It's just like, you just never know. That's crazy.
So then it goes to like full elation in my body. Like now that it is a story, right?
Yeah.
You got in by 1 point and avoided disaster. You're going to the CrossFit Games and I get to ask you questions and I get out there and it's nothing but a flood of emotion. You are so overtaken by the elation and the joy of making the CrossFit Games that it's out there on Instagram. It's out there, for people to see, but you are just overcome with emotion. And it was one of the greatest moments in my media career with CrossFit.
Oh gosh.
You guys just were that elated. And then one of your guys is like, we got holes.
Yeah.
And there are holes we need to work on and we've got to get them fixed before we get to the games.
Yeah.
So there's like this joy from you and Shelby. And then I don't even know who the guy was, but he was like, well, we got to work on handstand push-ups, rope climbs,
Yeah. At me. I get it. I understand. Working on it. Yeah. I just remember turning around and I saw you and I was like, can I hug you? And you're like, no.
And so the audience knows, like they tell us they're very adamant. Do not touch the athletes. They have to go to drug testing and we cannot have anything that messes that up on the way from there to drug testing. And so the first thing is like, I want to give you a hug. And I'm like, I do too, but I'm not allowed to touch you.
Yeah, don't touch me. That was really funny. I was like, oh, okay, got it.
And you'd never been in that moment, so you probably didn't even
No.
know the rules of the drug testing
Scott, I've
piece.
never been to a big competition. That was my first one. Like, other than a local. Yeah, it was just a lot to take in.
So I just want you to know, I never opened my notes page for this interview.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Never. It's just been you and I talking. So let's wrap this up, and then
Okay.
I've got to have you back on.
Yeah, I love that.
You're going to the CrossFit Games.
Woo! Going to Madison.
So let's go back to the beginning of these stories when there's a little girl who needs a mom.
Mm-hmm.
You say, I'm her.
Yeah.
You go through what some would say would be like a movie style drama of your life.
Yeah, my 20s. Yep.
How you're a games athlete.
Yeah.
And nobody can take that away from you.
Yeah.
So first of all, what do the next 2 months look like?
Well, lots of training. We are 1 week into it. We're following the Mayhem Athlete program. And last week, I'm pretty sore. This week looks even more brutal. Lots of training, outdoors, swimming, just new things. I'm really excited for the games training because it's not just in the gym. We get to go do other things. My kids are very supportive. I feel guilty because they're at home by themselves during the day, but they're all on board. They're excited. They know what the games are. They know that we're going. Yeah.
So I've seen clips of dinosaurs doing sit-ups. So the kids do get to come occasionally.
They do. Yeah. The two older ones, they're in CrossFit Kids there. And then Nora, the youngest one, will come just to get her out of the house sometimes and not fighting with her sisters. I'll bring her with me.
What do your daughters think of you and what you've accomplished this year? Like, they love mom, right? We know
Right.
that. But mom did something amazing. Do they get it?
I think Bella does. It's really fun, especially from a teenager. You know how they can be. So when I hear her saying, "My mom is so cool. Look what she did." I can hear her talking to her friends. That feels so good. And then Charlotte recently, my middle daughter, she's like on like this yoga instructor kick. Like she wants to teach me yoga and help me with visualization, and even talking about healthy foods. So it's really cool that they have that role model. Like they see, hey, mom's this really cool athlete, but also they are learning to be healthy as well from my actions.
And isn't that the best part?
It's so cool. Yeah.
Like these athlete stuff is cool, but
Yeah.
the fact that you see what your kids are learning from
Yeah.
your example
Yeah.
is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
Because my daughter, like, she did CrossFit in her teens and she was really good.
Yeah.
Really good. And then because I was so obsessed by it, she just like didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But then I talked to her. She just graduated from college and she's like, yeah, I went to the gym and I did some weighted lunges and I did some, and I'm like,
Good. Getting back into it.
Not going to say it.
Yeah.
So that's super cool.
Yeah.
So now here's the coolest question I get to ask any games qualifier.
Okay.
You get to go get the kits, right? You're going to be outfitted head to toe in games gear.
Yeah.
How excited are you for that moment?
Oh my gosh, we're so excited. It's going to be great. I'm really excited for the team pictures. I think that's I just went and looked at my friend Toya's pictures the other day where they're all like, I can't wait to be in our games outfit and fun pictures and the kids to see those, and it's going to be so much fun.
Every athlete I talk to after the fact says that's when it becomes real.
Yeah. Like walking through the tunnel, all of it. It's just, I'm pumped. It's going to be so much fun. And hopefully we can, show people that we're there to compete and that we can put up some good scores and be good fighters there.
What's the goal?
I don't know. I don't know. Like we're gonna work really hard. I don't know if they're doing cuts, if we want to be. I mean, obviously that would be really cool to be in the last day. But we're just gonna give it our all. We're gonna trust our training. That's the biggest thing, is just putting the work in every day and going there and just trusting that we're ready.
So I'm going to finish up just by showing a couple comments from
Okay.
people in the chat, and that is Shelby Jones.
Shelby, hey, that's my teammate.
The first time I heard Lauren's stories, my jaw had dropped. It's like a movie.
Yeah.
Carolyn said,
Hi.
it was so great to follow your team throughout the semifinals. Super happy for you, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks, Carol.
And she also said that when you guys got in, it was an amazing moment to watch.
Amazing feeling too.
So this has been awesome. I'm so glad that we got to meet, and I'll be in Madison.
Yes. Hey, let's get that picture at Madison.
We will.
We didn't get a picture.
And I think we'll follow your team. Hopefully, once I figure out how big of a team I'm allowed to have with me, we may be following your team there.
Oh, I would love that so much. Yeah, that'd be great.
Behind the scenes with CrossFit Believe.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So we'll stay in touch.
Okay.
I'd like to have you and maybe a teammate on again before the games.
Yeah, we'd love that. Shelby lives down the road.
Then.
All right, sounds good to me.
And I did want to say, it's obvious you have the school teacher in you, because when you look behind you.
This is my classroom. I used to teach online. Where am I? Am I backwards? I used to do VIP Kid. So this is my classroom.
And you have not taught in 4 years, and it's still there.
It's still there. It's a chalkboard wall, and now George, my husband, uses it for his school, his homework. Nice. So yeah.
And he does homework on the chalkboard too?
Do what?
He does his homework on the chalkboard too?
Well, I think that was my kids. Do you see that? It's all like math, and I love it.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you,
everybody.
Scott.
And awesome story.
That's my husband. I love you too, George.
With that, everybody in the chat, thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see everybody next time on the Clydesdale Media Podcast.
Bye, guys.